Uranium, uranium, uranium. Yes, we will talk gold. Yes, we will talk cryptos. Yes, we will talk Biden. Yes, we'll talk Moderna and 9/11 and what we've learned and what we haven't, and about invisible sculptures. But we will definitely be focusing on uranium. A lot to get to. I am Gerardo Del Real along with my co-host, Mr. Nick Hodge. This is episode 134 of our therapy sessions, otherwise known as Bizarro World. Mr. Hodge, how are you, sir?
Could have made a lot of money if you listened to the 133 episodes before this one. I'm doing great, Gerardo. How are you doing?
I am phenomenal. Sometimes it's luck. Sometimes it's hard work. Sometimes it's a little bit of both. Let's get into the uranium space. Fission Uranium has a 52-week low of 23 cents. If I recall correctly, it dropped to as low as 10 cents right before that. Here it is trading at $1.12. 1 month chart, it's doubled. It's up 100% in the last 4 weeks. I went away to Beaver Creek. I'll talk about the Beaver Creek Precious Metals Summit. I was gone for a week, dropped our 18-year-old off at school in Pennsylvania, took a flight from there straight to Colorado, powwowed for a couple of days, got some great work done, vetted some companies, had some phenomenal meetings. And in that time span, Fission was up another 50-60%, right? Azarga Uranium is being bought out and trading like another partner may step up, or it's just going to keep going higher with the rest of the space. And oh, by the way, the Wall Street Redditors, they're on it now as well. So it's who saw that one coming, Nick, right? And the moral of the story, it's not to pound our chest and say, hey, we told you how to get ready. We told you to get positioned. We could do that all day and night. There's timestamps on all our stuff. You can go look at the research. Nick's had presentations from, a year ago, 2 years ago. I've written to you in the last several weeks, months, and years about getting positioned ahead of time and making sure that you're early, not late, because these bull cycles are violent and you could miss out on 200% gains if you're waiting on the sidelines for CNBC to tell you to get in the game. But that is the point that I want to drive home. The resource space is highly cyclical. You have to know that bear markets naturally produce that kind of slingshot effect that we're seeing in the uranium space. And I got news for everybody that thinks that, these prices are getting ahead of themselves and they have technical analysis and they have fundamental research and they have price targets. All of that is fine and dandy. Throw that out of the window for a little bit, because yes, there are going to be 40 and 50% pullbacks in this little run that we're going to get into. But this is going to go on for a little bit. It's not going to be weeks. It's going to be months. And, if I had to guess, I sent a note out to subscribers about how long I thought this would last and where it would get to. And I won't say it here yet, because it's not fair to paying subscribers that, have waited years for this market to kind of turn. But I think we're in for a hell of a ride. Any thoughts? I know you have some, Nick.
I mean, so many thoughts, sort of tough to organize them. I'll do my best to do so.
Do what I do. Don't organize them. Just throw them on the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah, I mean, so you mentioned a year ago I was giving a presentation, and that was in February of 2020. And it was the title of the talk was Urani When, with a question mark, and basically wondering, when is this uranium bull market going to happen? And I was saying that, and I won't recap the whole past 10 years because we did that in the last podcast. But what I will say is that the sector was down 90%. We knew that it was a when, not a if. We've been through that. We know that it's a large part of the globe's clean energy baseload power source. But then over the past year, you had a really sort of a bottoming process where like Energy Fuels was laying off people at the White Mesa mill, for example. That's like the only company that was producing uranium in the US was laying off people. And then you had uranium companies changing their name, like, how in the resource space, like you said, it was cyclical. So for a while, gold companies were becoming cannabis companies, were becoming crypto companies. Like that's a trope in the sector, right? We laugh about that, how there's these trend chasing lifestyle companies. But you had the opposite of that in uranium last year, where companies were taking uranium out of their name, right? And so I was highlighting that as a true bottom marker of the sector, anecdotally, right? Of course, the price had been below the cost of production for a long time, and that had to change change. And that sort of brings us up into modern times and what you are writing about today, because like you say, it's cyclical, and you can own a name for a long time, like a fission, and be buried in it. And wake up one day and be up on your money. So
and be smart again.
Now that's not a strategy, right? So what do I want to say? So the things that we said about the uranium market are true. The bulk of the big gains come in the beginning, right? You've got to be in when the sector turns. And then let's talk about where we are now, because that's important, right? We can, and you were writing about that this morning, and I'll let you take back over. But for me, the points are sort of this, and you highlighted one, is that the price of uranium still isn't a cost of production level, right? We know it takes $50-$60 a pound for many uranium companies to take it out of the ground, and we're only at $40 a pound. And then you mentioned Wall Street bets as well. And so I guess what I would have to say is that the uranium space is so small. There's only a couple of dozen companies in the space, that if these Wall Street bets folks want to come, that's fine and dandy. They had a lot of fun with their short interest positions, but NYSE listed short interest positions are not uranium stocks. And so I think it's going to be interesting if outside buying comes in, and then you're going to have all these new ETFs and passive funds too that are going to have to buy these stocks for momentum trades, or for whatever it is, or because people are piling into the sector. And you can talk more about that with money coming into the physical trust, right? And so all that to say, I think still upside. And this is one of those things where everyone's going to be a uranium expert now, is the sort of the last thing I wanted to mention. Just like everyone was a cannabis expert and everyone was a crypto expert. And so, yeah, like you were saying, is
we got timestamps.
Yeah, and it's sort of like Wayne Gretzky, right? Which is something I brought up recently.
Yeah,
everybody always talks about being where the puck is going. Well, we've been just sitting here waiting for the puck for a long time, because we knew that uranium had to go up, just like we knew that copper prices had to go up, and we knew that there was no way the U.S. was producing enough lithium and whatever rare earths for its goals. And so I guess I would just plant the seed for the next thing, right? Because I saw an article this morning on Bloomberg about how this big solar panel breakthrough happened. It's reliant on using more copper, and I just smiled.
There are things in the world that are so obvious, right? And in the markets, you can get rich, you can get wealthy if you actually have some conviction about you. And let me tell you what is abundantly obvious. Sugar Daddy Sprott just upped its $300 million ATM basket of money that it's going to use to gobble up uranium pounds to $1.3 billion. This is continued buying in the spot market at whatever pace they deem appropriate for them, which will translate into a ton of spot uranium getting taken out of the market. There's $1 billion or so left. They're not, hiding the strategy. They're not being quiet. They're telegraphing it and letting everybody know. It's not a coincidence that the spot price has gone from 30 to 33 to 35 when Sprott got involved to 43, and others, ask at 44 right now. We know that the spot price has to get to at least $55, $60 a pound before any of these producers seriously decide to invest in their infrastructure and personnel to bring operations back online. I'm talking about ISR producers that can produce cheaply and quickly, right? And there's companies in the portfolio, which again, Nick and I, to our credit, we've been able to position subscribers, although it's taken some patience, in a way where you have exposure to ISR producers, you have exposures to like the Azargas of the world that got taken out, or it's being proposed that they get taken out. Other companies that have high grade pounds in the Athabasca Basin, you name it, there's a good basket of exposure to the different types of uranium companies because not all of them are alike. But the price is going higher. the move is just starting. I'm actually delighted because I'm on Twitter and I'm seeing, a couple of long-term uranium bulls that are saying sold out of this, sold out of that, or sold half today and writing out the rest. And again, it sounds cliche, but you'll never go broke taking a profit. Kudos to anybody that's taking, a triple digit win off the table and taking 50% off or taking the whole thing off. Congratulations. Go do something nice for yourself and your family. You earned that. But I'm telling you, this is just the beginning. I'll save what's going to happen till the end of the month because I plan on writing, a bit more in depth for Junior Resource Monthly subscribers at the end of the month. But it is going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be volatile, and it's a precursor to what's going to happen in the gold space. So I do believe in the gold space, as I wrote this morning. It's going to be a little bit more nuanced, and it's going to actually take a little bit longer to play out, which means less volatility and more sustainability. But I think a lot of fun to come in the uranium space. And yeah, I think that's where we are today.
I would just remind you that at the end of the last uranium bull, the sector ETF, the Global X Uranium ETF, topped out well over $100. It actually, though they're not related, it went to almost like the price of uranium. The ETF went to $140. It's not related to the price of uranium. Of course, it owns uranium equities, but right now it's sitting at $28, for example. And so more than 5 times higher at the peak of the last uranium bull, for some context.
And here's some more context. I also, believe that the world is going to make a bigger effort to pivot towards nuclear power. So, I recorded a podcast about a month or so ago talking about the perfect storm for uranium. This was back in early August. And, everything just, again, if you just pay a little attention and granted, I do this for a living and love the space. I love the resource space. I love trading. I love the hustle. But if you were just paying a little bit of attention, you could see the catalyst all lighting up. All the dominoes were lining up. And I think a big one that's really underestimated outside of Sprott, outside of everything else that's going on, is the fact that, there's a global movement to pivot towards cleaner energy. And you're just not going to be able to hit your targets if you don't include more nuclear in that equation. And so, no, I think it's going to be a fun time. It doesn't mean that you don't wake up tomorrow and everything's down 22% as everybody decides to take profits. Or it also doesn't mean that if the overall indices, have a black swan event where things crash, well, guess what's going to get hit right away as well? People are going to go liquidate those 200-300% gains that they're sitting on, right? Just to be safe. And so opportunities will present themselves. The question you got to ask yourself is, we told you about Azarga at 25 cents. Heck, you financed it at what, Nick? 7.5 or something like that?
So I financed URZ Energy, which was ultimately merged with Azarga and a forward split, 2-for-1. Yeah. So shares at 7.5 cents from a 15-cent financing.
There you go. So whether you got in at 7.5, at 15, at 25, wherever you got in, look, the stock's sitting at like 75 cents right now. And I am pretty confident that it's headed higher. Doesn't mean that we don't wake up tomorrow and it's back at 55, 60 cents because a fund decided that it needs to tap out and take its profits, right? It's the way that the markets work. But I think that in the uranium space, a lot of the risk was mitigated because of the drastic beatdown of prices. And that brings me to gold, because I think, we're seeing a similar thing in the gold space right now, where I just got back from the Precious Metal Summit in Beaver Creek, Colorado. And I joked on Twitter that we were all there to congratulate ourselves being uranium bulls, right? But there was some truth to that. And what I mean by that is everybody's looking around just wondering when the fundamentals are going to catch up.
When's it our turn?
When's it our turn? And our turn is coming. And what I am telling everyone out there listening is a lot of the risk has been mitigated, and it hasn't been fun. A lot of positions are, down 50% from 52-week highs. It's the way the process works. I can tell you in the next several months, I will be refining the portfolio to make sure that companies that are not active, that are waiting for the market to turn, they're not going to be in the portfolio anymore. You have to be active. I want companies that are being opportunistic, that are taking advantage of the downturn. That applies for copper, that applies for gold, that applies for anything. And so, yeah, you'll be seeing some movement in the portfolio on both the trading service and the monthly letter there. But the gold space is setting up beautifully. Look, Anglo Gold Ashanti just announced it's buying the remaining 80.5% stake in Corvus Gold in Nevada for $370 million. And let me quote the Anglo Gold Ashanti. Let me quote what it is that it was looking for. They were looking for a meaningful, low-cost production base in a premier mining jurisdiction. And I don't think it's a coincidence that in the Junior Resource Monthly portfolio, the companies that have held up the best are companies that have meaningful low-cost production bases in premier mining jurisdictions. The sole exception being Perpetua Resources, which I'll have an update for subscribers here in the next week or so. But outside of that, the probes and, a couple of the other names, these names are near 52-week highs, right? And so a lot of opportunity. The explorers are a gift. We have tax loss selling season coming up. Some of those gifts will become even cheaper. So, pay attention to that space and come up with a strategy. And if, is uranium the new crypto space? Probably for the next 12 months, I think.
We can talk about crypto too. I think the point I wanted to make, or what I thought of while you were talking there, is that I financed URZ Energy, which became Azarga 4 or 5 years ago, right? You talk about writing on the wall and seeing things that are going to happen, and then having the conviction, right? Conviction is a big part of that. I mean, Azarga didn't go straight up after 2015, 2016. It had a tough road to hoe like the rest of the uranium sector for the past 5 years. But similar to the gold space, as you just related it, the things that make for a quality gold speculation in the exploration and development space are the same now as they were last year, as they were the year before that. And you just touched on them, right? Quality assets, good jurisdictions. And I would add to that, of course, people and share structure. And even, we continue to see these acquisitions, and I've had my share as well. If you're, looking at companies like Taranga and others, but even in the Corvus camp, right? Like I had readers in Bullfrog.
Absolutely.
Was taken out last year. It's in the same exact geographic region. And so the things that we look for, substitute the commodity or the currency with whatever you want: gold, copper, uranium, nickel, on down the line, right? Rare earths, PGEs, whatever it is. It's sort of the same due diligence process, and it's the same cyclical nature, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And so once you get good at identifying what makes the good speculations, and if you can layer on top of that any sort of expertise in either the market cycle itself, or heaven forbid, if you know something about rocks, then you can be really dangerous, right?
Throw in a little bit of luck and you can even look smart. Let's talk gold. I mentioned I was at the Beaver Creek Precious Metal Summit. It was a productive summit. I would say that of the 1,600 or so registrants, about half of those were there in person. A lot of question asking. When, right? When will the Magna Golds of the world, when will the Perpetua Resources of the world, companies that, again, have clear paths towards much higher valuations, when does that happen? And anybody that tells you they know exactly when is lying to you, just like anybody that tells you they knew exactly when the uranium stocks were going to catch fire was lying to you. Some of us did tell you that Sprott coming in was going to be a big deal and would have a material consequential effect, and hopefully you use that to prepare. But the bottom line is gold still looks pretty good, Nick. It's sitting right here today at 1792. Silver's below the 24 level. Those numbers are not going to get anyone excited. What are you looking for in the precious metal space?
Other things to not go up as fast or faster. I mean, basically, that's what's happening. I mean, for me, sort of like uranium, right? I mean, capital didn't have to go into uranium because it wasn't moving. And now that it is moving, it's going to attract more capital. Let me give you the caveat, like sort of that you just said. I mean, gold hit a record last year. I mean, the question asking when, well, it might be past tense for a little bit, right? I mean, it went to a record. And so I think, what we're looking at now is the stock market continues to hit records, right? Other sectors are going up faster than gold. And so my eye is turning toward, the end of this year. What is the GDP number truly going to be? Because we got to get a sense of this growth and inflation and stagflation, right? Because honestly, if the U.S. could get growth under its feet that kept pace with this rampant inflation, then it might not be great for gold. But if the growth slows, which is something you and I have been talking about as far as, stock market cycles, then that would be really good for gold. The other thing I would say is that, and you sort of said it as well, is that it's not the worst environment. There's a lot of, and like you say, it feels worse if you're not doing anything, right? Because, Rupert Resources put out a 4 million ounce resource this morning and is also near 52-week highs, right? And so there's companies that are doing stuff, and the companies stepping out of the developers and explorers for a second, the earnings continue to be really healthy. And I know I've said that 13 fucking times now, but
you've been right 13 fucking times too.
Franco continues to report record earnings, and just as a personal investor, when I pressed the buy button on gold stocks in the past couple of weeks, it hasn't been on small companies. I bought some, and I've said this, I bought some Kinross. I started to buy some Newmont. And why am I buying Newmont? Well, let's look at the yield of Newmont, right? Relative to the yield of what you can get on a bond, or even the yield relative to the entire S&P yield, for example. When you've got Newmont up at 3 or 4%, these are the sort of gold equities I think that should be and are attracting capital. And then I think what you'll see is, and again, who am I? And no one knows when it's really going to happen, but and again, as you said, it continues to happening. Maybe at not the pace we want, but another acquisition announced today. Like, these balance sheets are going to continue to be healthy, and I think deals are going to continue to be done. And so, I guess the last thing I would say is that you don't have to wait for some pop off moment, right? Like you're seeing with uranium now, because the gold space is much larger, and so you can have successes by being a truly good stock picker, I would say.
And, I'll give you a freebie. Let's pivot to copper really quick, right? Copper is looking great again at, $4.29 a pound. Futures are higher, of course, but, Cucho Copper just announced a 1.1 billion pound copper equivalent resource, and it's ramping up towards a feasibility study here that'll have results published at the end of October. But it just increased its main deposit by 21%. It increased the tonnage by 21%. It's sitting on 765 million pounds of copper, 1 billion pounds of zinc, 288,000 ounces of gold, 20 million ounces of silver. This is just on the main deposit. This is only the mineralization that's in the measured and indicated categories. This excludes anything from the inferred resource or the exploration upside on the property. And here it sits with a market cap of less than $70 million Canadian. That's a hell of a pick if you're looking for something that probably has a good bulk of, the risk mitigated because of how advanced this deposit is, the grades, which will translate into margins, the fact that it's got a major partner that seems keen on financing it, and it's got a clear path towards permitting and production. So that, to me, at these levels, seems like a no-brainer. It also seemed like a no-brainer back when it was trading at 20-something cents, and we were telling you the exact same thing, by the way. Wasn't as far along as it is now. But again, the rocks were the same, and the asset was the same, and the management was the same. So you just have to pick your comfort level as a speculator in this space. You can either buy when it's hot, you can wait until that, first 100% move happens, or you could buy quality and sit on it. And look, if you got to wait more than a year, all right, you just, you went from a short-term capital gain to, a long-term capital gain. You'll pay less in taxes, and you'll likely be rewarded if you are a good stock picker that maybe has a little bit of an idea of what he or she is doing, and maybe gets a little luck to go our way as well, right?
Or, or pay someone who is, right? And so, it's hard to do on your own. There's a lot of companies to evaluate, and there's a lot of nuance to how you evaluate them. I think last thing I would say, in addition to your comment about being comfortable as a speculator, is another layer of that comfort is, knowing which sort of companies you're comfortable valuing and doing diligence on. Like, I just know for me as a personal investor, I'm not great and haven't had much success, the bulk of my success, with exploration, and certainly not greenfields. I just find it tough to put a value on those projects when it's financing time, because I can't, frankly, because I can't multiply some number times a resource base or look at an NPV or something like that. And that just makes it easier for me. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you're not comfortable on the timing and aren't great at knowing or evaluating what the catalysts are, an easy thing, maybe not easy, but one thing that was taught to me over the years is, if you buy something that has a resource base, there's a backing there, right? And so come black swans, come cycles that take longer to develop, come permits that get denied and have to be reapplied for, you're still sitting on that resource base. And that has inherent value, even if the market isn't recognizing it at any given time.
Agreed. Or you could do what an Italian artist just did. Did you hear about this one, Nick?
Well, maybe not this one specifically, but I think I know what you're going to talk about.
An Italian artist just sold a fucking invisible sculpture. Let me say that again.
A new one? Because we've talked about this already. This is a new one?
No. This is a new one. This the last one was it was a box of air. Oh. This is an invisible sculpture, Nick.
Totally different.
Completely different. This one is called I Am. Io sono. I Am. Sold it for over $18,000. Io sono. There you go. See? And of course, for over $18,000, you, the buyer, could have got a certificate of authenticity to prove that the invisible sculpture is real. And so that's where we are in 2021, y'all. You could buy a perpetual resources with nearly 7 million gold ounces in reserves. For pennies on the dollar of where it should be. Or you can buy an invisible sculpture for $18,000. It's to each their own. No knock on approach there. Obviously, someone's doing really well with these invisible sculptures and these certificates of authenticity. I think it makes for interesting times, fun conversation. I don't know where we will be in 10 years or so, but I would much rather continue to dabble in the world of hard assets, real estate, hard assets, resource companies. And every now and then Nick throws me a bone with one of his non-resource companies that I speculate on and tend to do well. So yeah, that's where we are. Interesting times.
Se compri quella scultura sei un idiota. If you buy that sculpture, you're an idiot. And so io sono means, like if it was Spanish, Jordo would say yo soy, right? And right. Io sono is like
that's how I pronounce it.
So tu sei un idiota.
No seas pendejo. Google it, everybody. All right. Did you hear about the Moderna lady? I was going to talk about this last week. I forgot to because I went on my rant about, all the things I ranted about last week. Did you hear about this 24-year-old woman who was arrested for falsifying her vaccination document?
I did.
Any thoughts? Did you hear about how she got caught?
I did.
You care to tell our audience?
So I didn't read the whole article as maybe Gerardo did. He might have to fill in some details.
Nah,
but I
there's
guess
not much to fill in.
This lady who didn't want to get the vaccine or who is otherwise an anti-vaxxer tried to make a vaccine card, fake one, counterfeit, as it were, and spelled Moderna wrong with an A instead of an O for Moderna. It was Maderna. And so, there's that.
She wanted to go to Hawaii. She didn't want to get vaccinated. Hawaii, whether you agree or not, you're not coming through without a vaccination unless you quarantine for 14 days. I've talked about how I don't agree with the mandates. I'll get into that a little bit more. We'll get into that a little bit more here in just a second. But yeah, you got, babe, you got to spell Moderna right. Like, I mean, come on. So we'll see what comes of this. I hope they don't come down too hard on her. But yeah, you got to get the spelling right. Let's talk about mandates and why I am a pro-vaccination person, but very anti-mandate. And this is exactly why, right? Because President Biden has decided that he will implement an executive order mandating all federal workers and contractors to either be vaccinated or go through the pain in the ass of having a weekly test every week for as long as you want to be gainfully employed, right? And again, if the man's conviction on this mandate was so passionate and based on a belief that this would be the best thing for humanity, I would at the very least say, well, at least President Biden and his staff believe in this, right? At least they believe in it. I disagree, but at least they're consistent in the application of this. And surely him and his staff will be the first to lead the way, right? Because that's what leaders are supposed to do. It's in the fucking title. Leader. But of course, because this is America and government's going to government, the executive order, which would mandate COVID-19 vaccines among all federal workers, doesn't apply to members of Congress, doesn't apply to the federal court system, doesn't apply to their staffers. So again, America, I know we just went through, the anniversary of 9/11 and what have we learned and what have we done. And I saw flags, beautiful flags all around my subdivision here. As I drove to my other house, I saw more flags and everybody was patriotic and everybody was just sharing their memories about where they were. And yet the hypocrisy and the separation between the people and the government, to me, is at an all-time high. And so, it's what's good for the goose should be good for the gander. Not the case. And if we don't believe in something to the point where you got to exempt yourself or your staffers or, just your group, then you don't really believe in that. So I call bullshit on it. What are your thoughts, Nick?
100%. I mean, that's the hypocrisy that people are tired of in the government, or at least growing more tired of. I think people have been trapped in their respective camps recently, and hopefully are starting to slowly emerge from that hibernation. Because as I see it, as I've seen it for a long time, there's neither political camp does anything to really advance the lifestyle or the livelihoods of their constituents. So I've never really understood the being beholden to politicians of any sort. The vaccine mandate, like if you want everybody to take it and mandate it for yourselves, right? And so not a lot more to say about that other than people continue to lose their damn minds over these vaccines and these masks, when I don't understand why it has to be that big of a deal. Don't get vaccinated if you don't want to get vaccinated, and then you're going to have to deal with the private ownership structure that we have in the U.S. that gives us sort of the foundation for those rights, right? Because just like you have a right not to get vaccinated, a business owner has a right not to let you the fuck in. And so if you want to use your rights as a catalyst or as a reason to not get vaccinated, then you have to be prepared for someone who doesn't view the vaccination the same way as you do to use those reasons as well. And I guess I'm doing a bit of rambling, but an example of that would be like United Airlines, for example, who has required that all their employees get vaccinated. And the out has always been using a religious exemption, right? And so they say, fine, you want a religious exemption? You are working. You are working without pay. You're not working without pay. Like you're at home and you're not getting paid. And so that's what at-will employment is. You want to have a greater debate about, whether this is being used for the Great Reset or whether government is taking advantage of this to learn
and it is
and control you more. Of course they fucking are. That's what government
do.
Right. Be anti-government, not not anti one political party, because it's they work in unison to do that, to learn more about you and to erode your rights. And it's not one party that's doing that. And so that's my takeaway, I guess.
So while all of you are out there, not all of you obviously, but for those of you that are out there beating each other up and shooting each other and, because what Fox News or MSNBC tells you, meanwhile, Nick and I are sitting at home relaxing, knowing damn well that the politicians on both sides are going to take care of us, right? And they're going to take care of us because we own companies and because we invest in assets that appreciate in value, hopefully. And when there is a taxable transaction on those assets, I am always confident, Nick, that government will make sure, because of the lobbyists in this country, will make sure that you and I get preferential treatment. And I don't even got to do a damn thing. I just got to keep running our business. You got to keep running our business. We got to keep trying to guess right in the market and apply our knowledge and our skill set. And then at the end of the year, we do our taxes like we do. And send off a check, although I hate doing it. And I don't worry too much. I remember during the election, the people on the right swore to me that if Biden was elected, the market was going to crash. I had friends tell me this. You bet your ass off if Biden wins. I'm selling 20% of my portfolio because I expect a 20 to 30% correction. Dow 40,000 is right around the corner, baby. Hasn't happened. And then I remember the next one. Well, Gerardo, you're a business owner. You co-own 2 companies with your business partner. Aren't you worried about this 39.6% capital gains tax that Biden's going to implement? And aren't you worried that, Biden's going to raise, the corporate tax rate to 28%? And I laughed. I said, he's not going to do that. He might want to. He might believe in it. It's not going to happen, right? And they looked at me like I was crazy. And they said, well, why don't you think it's going to happen? And, in the back of my mind, I didn't want to be, obnoxious about it. But in the back of my mind, I'm going, because the real wealth in this country, and again, I'm well off. I'm not wealthy yet, but I do all right. The real wealth in this country has made sure that the laws are written and the lobbyists are in place to guarantee that corporations, which run this country behind the scenes, are the last ones to really get affected by any policy changes and proposals. And so when I see the Democrats' proposal from the Ways and Means Committee today, and I see what they're proposing, this isn't even what's going to make the final cut, y'all. What they're proposing, it's such a drastic scale back, and I'm happy for it, but I knew it would happen. It's such a drastic scale back from what they initially had proposed on the campaign trail. So let's go through it. Corporate tax rate, and this was the biggest jump, right? Would go from 21 to 26.5%. That one won't happen. Let me speculate now. But it is still less than the 28% that Biden initially campaigned on. The top rate on capital gains, it's not going to be 39.6, which is what Biden proposed and everybody told me was going to make the stock market sell off. The proposal now, it takes it from 20 to 25. And even that might not end up that way, right? There's also a 3.8 Medicare surtax on high earners, and the top capital gains rate would be 28.8%. Now, I ask you this, Nick, as somebody that is also well off and is subject to capital gains every year and, asset price appreciation. Do any of those numbers, assuming the worst, do 26.5% on the corporate tax rate or capital gains from 20 to 25%? Will that discourage you from making money with me?
Jordan, I'll do you one better. I didn't even listen to the numbers you were saying. What am I going to do if I can sell my business? I don't give a fuck.
You're not going to quit making money, Nick?
No.
But what if they do tax you at 39%? It's not like you don't want to show them by making less money?
I guess I'll have to make 40% more money. I mean, that's how
Exactly.
wealthy and rich individuals think. And so it's a difference in of opinion, and it's a difference of logic. And some of it comes with maturity because, when I was younger, I thought the government was going to run us into the ground and there was going to be a revolution, but there's never a fucking revolution, Gerardo, for all the reasons that you just said. And the sooner that you can understand that, and the sooner that you can understand how that game really works, is the faster that you can not have to play that dumb fucking game, right? And that's what I mean by, people that are beholden to one side of the politics. Oh, Biden's going to tax you, this and that, or like you said, the market's going to end. Remember last summer, like, if they convict Derek Chauvin, like the militias are going to take over. Like, no, the fuck they're not, man. Like they're just not. And so all this like end of the world stuff, I'm also old enough now to have seen the world end a few times. So it's a major big end of world prediction, including Y2K, which is a fucking newsletter promotion to begin with. And so I guess what I'm saying is that, these people, I don't want to say that it's not lazy and it's not dumb. It's more comfort, for one. They're having their lowest base needs met, right? They've got their calories and they've got their orgasms and they're good. And so to move up that ladder of needs, what is that? Maslow's hierarchy, right? You're going to send me back to college. It's hard, and it takes preparation, and it takes study, and it takes not believing Chicken Little every week, right? And the politics, the U.S. government is full of nothing but Chicken Littles, right? On the one side, whatever. If AOC does this, the world is going to end. And on the other side, if whatever, Rand Paul, or give me another guy, from Tom Cotton or something, from Kansas do this, then the world is going to end. And the truth is that neither one of those things is true. And you should just tune it all the fuck out, right? So get a good accountant, get a good lawyer, and let them fucking worry about it. And you invest and run your business.
That's it. So while we were, not celebrating, but remembering 9/11, right? And celebrating the liberties that America affords us, and, all patriotic with our flags, it was interesting to me. I was reading a story last week about this former Marine that was pulled over allegedly for following a truck too closely, right? Did you read this one, Nick?
I did.
So for those of you that did not, a Nevada trooper pulled over Mr. Stephen Lara, former Marine, and he explained to Mr. Lara that he may not have realized he was committing a violation, but that he was following a tanker truck a little too closely. And so they talked for a little bit, and eventually the trooper said, well, look, actually, we're out here just pulling people over because there's a lot of smuggling of illegal drugs and weapons and currency. And so, do you mind if we go ahead and search your car? And, Stephen Lara, former Marine, law-abiding citizen, apparently says, you can search the car. I'm on my way to visit my daughter in Northern California. And just so you know, I have a lot of cash in the car. I don't believe my money is safe in the banks. I have receipts for the withdrawals of this money. And so go ahead, search the car, right? They find $87,000 in a zip top bag in the trunk. No drugs, no crimes, no citations, nothing. Meaning he didn't do anything wrong, wasn't in violation of any laws, whether federal, state, or city. So what does the officer do? Gets his $87,000, throws it in the police cruiser, and says, we are going to adopt your money. That's what the process is called in America, y'all. It's called an adoption. It's DEA code word for you've been jacked, you've been robbed, right? And
civil asset forfeiture. Yeah.
Civil asset forfeiture. You got it. And so Mr. Lara had to get a lawyer, talk to the Washington Post, and sue the government to get his money back. And it wasn't until the Washington Post reached out, and this is why you should fucking support journalism when it's not opinion-based, when it's fact-based, and it's important, right? But they reached out for a comment. The lawyer reached out, said, this is what we're doing. And immediately, of course, the money was returned. the Justice Department said it is now reviewing its existing policy on adoptive forfeitures. Adoptive forfeitures, Nick. They're reviewing it. Now, look, forget who does it. It's happened for years on end. It's gotten a lot worse here in the past, I would say 4 to 6 years. But this can't happen. This just can't. It can't happen in America. It can't happen in America if we're going to continue to say we're the land of the free and, do all the silly things that we do sometimes to prove our political points or prove how patriotic we are. We can't not be upset at something like this where he can show you the receipts. He can show you where the money came from. He can show you that he's not committing any crimes. You can't prove he's committed any crimes. You're not even arresting him for committing any crimes. But yet you just take $87,000 from the guy. That's insane. That's insane. In 2018, the amount forfeited by the Justice Department through adoptions not connected to an operation was $19.6 million. That's insane. In America.
I have a lot of thoughts on this, Gerardo, and have been talking about it for a long time.
Yes, you have.
In fact, it's part of the bizarro world that we find ourselves in because going back, like you say, 2016, 2017, 2018, I was giving talks about why it was a bizarro world because the cops were in fact stealing more than the robbers. If you look at the totals of things that were reported stolen versus the amount of assets that were forfeited to police agencies, they were, air quotes here, stealing more than actual robbers were. And like you say, this has gone on for a long time. And it's one of those things that, like uranium stocks, nobody cares about until they do, right? Until it happens to you, in fact. And so this happens rampantly. And here's a couple of the more, the most sinister part about it is that cops are allowed to, departments are largely allowed to keep this money and fund themselves with it. And so there was a famous one, maybe not famous if you don't like keeping tabs on the police in your country, but there was a high profile incident a couple of years ago where this police department was buying like margarita machines with their civil asset forfeiture money to like serve up margaritas in their police department, right? And so, and now I'm going to talk for a second because once you have that, then they are then incented to get more assets forfeited, right? And if you're incented to do that, then you're incented to take money like from this former Marine, even when he has receipts. And then when the law is habitually and perpetually on your side, even when you're wrong, then you get the confidence to say, I can take this money and not have any repercussions because cops never get tried. And even if they do, they're never found guilty. And so that interdiction, which is called police interdiction, that civil asset forfeiture, then becomes institutionalized and it becomes the de facto way of doing business, right? And so I've talked about this before, right? When you have cops riding around looking to pull people over, not because to make the community safer, not because they didn't signal at the stop sign, but because you think that you can extract some money from them with impunity, then it creates very dangerous situations because that impunity carries on to what? Shootings, etc. And then you've also got cops pulling over cars, not for legitimate reasons. And so the ultimate end here is that you have a complete bastardization of what it means to be a cop in the United States, right? Because if a cop is more likely to pull you over and steal from you than a robber, then where the fuck are we?
I tell you where we are. I know this isn't related, but it's Bizarro World. That's what the podcast is called. It doesn't have to be. Did you read about the Proud Boy rat that got shot in Washington?
Oh, did I? No, I don't think I did.
All right. So in Washington State, so I ranted last week about federal informants and the lack of accountability and how, I'm not a fan, right? Be accountable. You commit a crime. Man up, you don't commit a crime, then you should get full protection of the law. Simple accountability. Seems basic and plain to me. So don't like informants. Anyhow, the Proud Boys and another group got into it with, the other side at an anti-vax rally on September the 4th. And this guy, Tiny is his nickname. He's a big, huge dude, right? Who's a part of the Proud Boys, who was proven to be an informant. Months ago, the paperwork came out. He was ratting on his own group. Well, here we are a couple of months later. The guy is headed to prison for violating his probation. He's still showing up at these rallies. He got shot in the foot. And now apparently, according to the news, there's supposed to be, another rally where they're going to get together and, I don't know, shoot shit up like in defense of the rat. It is crazy Looney Tune time in America right now, Nick. So I don't know how informed people are about the way that the streets used to work once upon a time, right? Once upon a time, the worst thing you could be in a neighborhood anywhere, whether you were in Italy or Mexico or in Chicago or wherever, was a rat. If you were an informant, you had no morals, no scruples, you were a pariah, right? And apparently now, not only is it okay to do that within your little group, like it's apparently okay to do so in front of the eyes of the federal government, because it's beyond me why this guy, well, it's not beyond me, he's a federal informant, I get it, but it's beyond me why this guy continues to be allowed to go to these events, be violent. There's a quote where he says, I'm not going to stop being violent. I'm not going to quit seeking confrontation. And he's just allowed to roam around free, to be a pariah in society, on law-abiding society. If I am a citizen in Washington State, in Olympia in this case, and I'm just minding my business and I just want to go to the bakery with my kids and have an espresso and a scone, I don't want to deal with any of these assholes out there that may shoot off a random shot or a stray bullet. In Chicago, there were 60 people shot this weekend, 7 fatally. Go arrest everybody that's doing this shit. But it's beyond me why in America in 2021, we're at such a point where like this doesn't even register on people's radar, that the federal government is encouraging federal informants to continue to commit violent crimes or be a part of like violent behavior as they're headed to prison. Is it not crazy to you, Nick?
Oh, it's absolutely crazy. We talked even last week about how, or maybe the week before, about how, we think the de facto policy is to divide. I mean, what else could it be? The arguments that I hear coming out of the politicians and how disingenuous it is, it just doesn't make any sense. And it should be see-through for anyone with half a brain. Like, just think about what you said about with Biden mandating things, but not for Congress, or at a higher level, just think about like the Fed members last week who were, caught trading this market that they're pumping up themselves, right? And so, I mean, it's at every level, right? And they debase it down to the dumbest, most divisive things that they can, I think, get the most people to bite on, and that becomes the narrative or whatever at the day, so that you're obfuscated from whatever, paying record prices for that new used car, or for the coffee that you got to drink every morning, or whatever it is. It's the frog in the pot thing, right? And if the frog is pissed off at X, Y, Z, then the frog is too busy getting boiled alive, right?
A lot of boiling alive going on. And again, I know this makes for good headlines, and the only reason I bring it up is because I keep wanting to drive the message home on this podcast. Do not fall for it. Do not go in the streets and risk your life unless you're really, really, really invested in this in some sort of personal way, which in that case I understand. You punch my sister, or you touch my kid or something, you're gonna have a problem. But outside of that, don't fall for it, everybody. It's all meant to distract. It's the modern day Colosseum, right? It's just happening in the streets. It's happening in Oregon. It's happening in Washington State. It's happening in Chicago for different reasons. It's still the same thing. And just, again, there's a lot more in common than there is things that separate us. And bottom line is, we don't even have to have anything in common to agree that we just want to provide a stable life for our family and ourselves and be left the fuck alone, right?
No, it's absolute noise. That's 100% right. And so, think back to that how you teach kids patient, right? Do you want one piece of candy now or two pieces of candy in 10 minutes? You always just got to be the two pieces of candy person, right?
That's it. 100% right. Nick, I know you wanted to talk about a new financial scam, and I think we interacted about this about a week or so ago, if it's the same one. So I'll let you do that. Did you want to get into that today?
Yeah, just quick. So, last week I talked about Robinhood and Klarna, and I talked about how especially Robinhood was trying to get its hands on more of your dollars, specifically middle-class dollars, because you're the product for Robinhood. They're selling your trading data to the bigger fish in the Wall Street sea. And so it just got me thinking about how all these, a lot more people are in the markets now. We see about the rise of the individual investor. We see about all these cryptocurrencies and altcoins and shit coins and all this stuff that's selling for record prices, whether it's Magic the Gathering cards or sports cards or non-fungible tokens or what was it 10 minutes ago? An invisible statue, right? And so,
an invisible sculpture.
with these record asset prices, I won't call them bubbles because we don't know, but with these record asset prices, and I would also add with record government stimulus, right? People sending out checks. There was a lot of liquidity in the system. And so, sorry, I just got to mute something real quick. I see these messages popping up recently in comment sections about, and they're well organized, right? So it'll be like a video about any investment, doesn't matter what it's about. But then 3 comments down, it'll be like, man, I just invested money with John Doe, and I was able to turn 12 grand into 26 grand in 3 months with his conservative strategy. And then you Google that person's name, and it's like this boilerplate website that comes off on as sort of like a scam, right? But they have up their broker license numbers and this and that. But if you Google the broker's license numbers, they're not like real people. And I've seen multiple instances of this, right? And it's coordinated because then people comment on the comments. Oh, yeah, I invested money with that person too, and I did great. I turned X into Y, whatever it is, right? And then I'm starting to hear via social media some sob stories about investing with people like this and sending them money and how the returns sort of Ponzi style would come back for a couple of months, but then how a little bit down the road, the entire initial seed capital disappears, right? And so just a word of warning that I'm seeing these increased, I'm just going to call them financial scams, investment scams, and they're spending ad dollars or paying people to bots or actual people to post messages about it. And I guess really what I wanted to say is, there's no free lunch at the end of the day. You're not wiring somebody 10 grand and getting 18 grand back 4 times in a row inside of a month. That's just not real. And that's what also I meant about, the being the two pieces of candy person. Even with these record asset prices and even with altcoins going to the moon and Wall Street bets and whatever it is, that lottery ticket in the market is just that. It's a lottery ticket. It's why the lottery isn't a retirement plan, right? And so just a word of warning, and I guess to keep an eye out on, because they seem increasingly complex and they seem increasingly coordinated and they seem increasingly multifaceted. And what I mean by that is they have an actual website, they got some social media profiles, and they're looking like real humans making these comments. And it's just getting sophisticated and maybe a bit harder to separate what's real when it comes to financial advertising. And I guess turning the conversation to myself puts the onus on us a bit more to have even better products and messaging and better communicate our realness, I guess.
Absolutely. And look, to that end, shout out to Art, because our team of company people got together, and Nick sent out the original website, and we all kind of looked at it and scanned really quick, and Art took I don't know, maybe 20 minutes, and noticed that there was one of these, boilerplate testimonials that talked about, even in the time of COVID, she was able to use her conservative strategies to make me however much she supposedly made him. And then the date was like January 2018.
Right. Totally pre-COVID. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
And that was just one site. I found a bunch more like that. And it's always 3 names. But anyway, like John Q. Smith or whatever. It's well done, I guess, if that's your bag.
yeah. Be careful out there, everybody. Be careful. If you want real information from real people, go to resourcestockdigest.com. Go to dailyprofitcycle.com. Go to digestpublishing.com. Shoot us an email. Shoot us a comment. Always happy to respond. Nick, we've been at it for almost an hour. I know we could do this forever. Is there anything else you got to get off your chest? Anything that you're watching? Anything people should be aware of this week?
No, we're headed here into fall. September is typically one of the roughest months for stocks. Last week, you got another, air quotes here, monthly sell-off. But the fear gauge is continuing to nosedive down. This market seems like the stock market I'm talking about, like it's going to continue to be healthy and stay invested. And if you took the summer off, get back to it.
Get back to it is right. That's all we got this week, everyone. I am Gerardo Del Real, along with my co-host, Mr. Nick Hodge. This was episode/therapy 134 of Bizarro World. Have a great week, everybody.
See ya.